Generally speaking, in a Catholic church service, they receive the body of Christ during communion. What are some rituals or things like that in Buddhist services that they exhibit their rituals?
Okay. Well, I'd say like with Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism, you're not going to find so much that's similar in that respect. If you go to one of their services, it's going to be pretty basic, if you will. That there might be a little devotion to the Buddha, but it's going to be more meditative. However, in Tibetan Buddhism, you're going to find a little more similarity there. Matter of fact, there are some rituals in Tibetan Buddhism where they actually use what's known as a kapala, which is, well, I mean, it's a cup, but it's a cup made out of a human skull. But they do fill it with wine, and there are some rituals that they will drink from that, which is almost kind of a Eucharistic image. So they do have that. There are some other things within Tibetan Buddhism that would be similar to, like a Gompa fire ritual, which is through the fire, everyone's kind of sins, if you will, become are kind of abolished, if you will, which is almost kind of like our lighting of a Paschal candle. They also have within Tibetan Buddhism kind of this. It's kind of like what we call smells and bells. That there's incense, there's the gongs and drums, and so there's kind of the bringing in of all the different senses, which you would find within a Catholic service as well. Typically, that's Catholic service kind of invokes a lot of our different senses as well. So I'd say if any form of Buddhism would have something similar to our Catholic concept of Eucharist would be Tibetan Buddhism.
What are the most important symbols in Buddhism, and what do they represent?
Right, well, I guess some of the important symbols would be like there's what's known as a stupa, which is they're kind of shrines that you find throughout the East, and they're kind of important because they become kind of pilgrimage sites for a lot of Buddhists, and they would have relics from the Buddha. Some of the oldest stupas are believed to contain some of the parchment from some of his early writings, fragments of writing instruments that he would use, so those have become important. Some other important symbols, kind of what's known as the Great Wheel, kind of looks like a wheel, but it has 8 parts, representing the Noble Eightfold Path. So you find that a lot. Numbers in many ways. For example, for Tibetan Buddhist, they do these sand paintings known as mandalas, and you're always going to find either sections of 4 or 8. 4 for being for the 4 Noble Truths, and then of course 8 being for the Eightfold Path. So those are some of the more typical ones. Those are some of the more, prevalent symbols within Buddhism. Outside of that, you're not going to find, there's some religions that are going to have a lot more symbolism going on. Not so much Buddhism. So those would be some of the more prominent symbols that you would find.
So how does meditation, mantras, and mudras contribute to the Buddhist faith?
Okay. Well, actually, mantras and mudras are actually part of meditation, or at least tools that help you with meditation. Mantra would be, repeating a word, or typically a phrase, and sometimes, a quote from the Tripitaka. And so they repeat it, and therefore it kind of keeps them focused, or otherwise the kind of prayer takes over. It's very similar in Catholicism with many monks, where they have that form of centering prayer, where they have maybe something from Psalms that they'll kind of repeat over and over again. So it really helps with meditation. Mudras are certain hand movements that you particularly find amongst Tibetan monks, and in many ways, when you think about it, it makes a great deal of sense. Where a lot of people, they can't sit perfectly still, because maybe they're ADD or ADHD or whatever. But Tibetan monks, this way, it actually involves some movement, right, as they're praying. So this way, the body is actually involved with that meditation. Meditation is really absolutely essential in Buddhism, because the whole idea is to reach enlightenment. And so the Noble Eightfold Path, everything in it is building up to what's known as right concentration, right? That's the whole idea, is that you get to this right concentration, which is, a heightened state of meditation. And through that, you're able to kind of abandon yourself, right? To abandon your normal reality and achieve enlightenment. And as the Buddha pointed out, that the path of salvation is this eightfold path, right? And that's how you you're able to overcome desire and everything else, is through that heightened state of meditation. So for the Buddhist, it's absolutely essential.
So is there anything else you'd like to add?
In regards to Buddhism, yes, I think something I'd like to add is, here in the United States, or at least in the West, a lot of Westerners have a kind of a misconception about Buddhism. And so you wind up with a lot of people who kind of become self-proclaimed Buddhists because they think that they can do whatever they want, right? And as long as they're kind of somewhat quasi-good people, right, then they're okay. And Buddhism is not a free-for-all. There are definite rules and guidelines that you do adhere to. That, yes, it is more psychological than what you might find in other religions, but there definitely is kind of a rule of conduct. There are moral guidelines that you have to follow, and there are some that might even be a little more strict than what you would find in Christianity. So that's kind of the interesting thing, that here in the West, there are a lot of Westerners that almost treat it like some kind of new age religion, when in fact it's been around longer than Christianity has, and there are ways in which one must conduct themselves. So like any other religion, there are moral guidelines that you follow.
Locations are the Buddha of Compassion on the right, Green Tower on the left, Fuji Shugden. There's water bowl offerings that we change every day. They have special substances in that first session I mentioned, change prayers. I'm trying to think what else. There's all these books you can read.
What's this right here?
That's where you offer people and you.
I don't think I asked. I mean, I'm not being a reverend, am I? So it's just like during sacred altars. Yeah, implements. So sacred. So you can do this during certain times in accordance to show.
Not just show the bell. I mean, so you just you ring the bell.
Okay.
Yep, so yeah, and so we just leave it covered. Just I mean, you can technically sit like Buddha is in the Vajra posture.
Like this? You probably so.
Wave to Miss Curry, Ben.
Wave to Miss Curry.